His own sister stood on live television and called him a pedophile. Not privately, not in a family meeting, but on the world stage during the moment he needed his family most. It was December 1993. Michael Jackson was already under investigation. He was already collapsing. And then Toya Jackson held a press conference in Tel Aviv and told the world that everything people were saying about her brother was true words that shattered a brother who was already barely holding himself together. Except it wasn't true. And that's the part almost nobody knows to this day. Segment 1. The sister in the shadows. To understand why Toya would do this and why it felt like the ultimate betrayal, you have to understand who she actually was. And you have to understand what she was to Michael. The reason this became one of the deepest wounds of his life. She wasn't the star. She was never the star. Michael was the star. And for Toya, that made all the difference. Because in the end, she chose to tear down her own brother, the same brother who had always held her in such high regard. By 1991, when her autobiography was released, Toya had spent decades living in Michael's shadow. She'd released 6 albums. None of them reached the US Hot 40. She appeared on American Bandstand a few times. Nothing stuck. Her performances had never crossed the mountain her brother had built. Record deals with Polydor, Epic, Urca, they all came and went. Her career wasn't going anywhere. For a while, the only thing that got public attention was a Playboy spread in 1989. The magazine sold 5 million copies. When asked about the semi-nude pictures, Toya was blunt about why she did it. I felt it was a good career move, she said on Entertainment Tonight. But the career move didn't move anything. That summer, the year before her book came out, she played a tour of county fairs. That's where she was playing county fairs while her brother sold out stadiums, while Janet was building a solo career, while the entire family seemed to have success except for her. That matters because it changes what her book was really about. It wasn't just about truth-telling. It was about finally being heard. Segment 2. The book that changed everything. In February 1991, Toya did something that would change everything. She published Growing Up in the Jackson Family. And this was no ordinary book. This was a book written in the harshest possible tone, one that exposed Michael and the entire family in the most brutal words, ripping open secrets that were meant to stay closed forever. Toya didn't whisper about the family's pain. She screamed it. She screamed about the cruelty that had been done to them. She wrote about their father Joseph ruling through violence, a whip in his hand. The Jackson 5 trained not with encouragement, but with fear. She wrote about her own beating at age 6. His boxer's fists pummeled her face and body over a report card that said she didn't speak in class. She claimed that one beating was the only time he hit her, but she also claimed that for her siblings, the violence never stopped. She wrote that her mother, Catherine, the woman everyone knew as the gentle, spiritual matriarch of the Jackson family, was actually the guiding force behind the cruelty and the abuse. She wrote that the abusive environment drove a lot of her brothers and sisters to attempt suicide. She went into detail about her siblings' pain, including Michael's, and the world listened. The book went to number 2 on the New York Times bestseller list. Millions of people bought it. Millions of people read it. The family secrets were no longer secrets. That matters because it shows something crucial. Toya had proven she was willing to tell family stories on a public stage. She'd already broken the covenant of silence. And when the next crisis came, when Michael needed his family to stand with him, Toya had already shown she could weaponize family pain for attention. She'd already tasted what it felt like to finally be heard. Segment 3. Jack Gordon's Iron Grip. But here's what changes the entire story. At the time, Toya wrote that book. At the time she was preparing to tell the world about her family's secrets, she wasn't making free choices. She was trapped. She was married to a man named Jack Gordon, and Gordon was dismantling her piece by piece. Jack Gordon was an ex-con. He'd served time for racketeering in 1979. There were whispers about other things, 2 statutory rape charges when he was 16, though the details were murky. He was almost 20 years older than Toya, and when he married her in 1989, it wasn't out of love, it was out of hunger. He saw her famous last name and he saw an opportunity to feed himself on her family's pain. He saw a woman desperate to be heard, and he saw how to weaponize that desperation. Gordon controlled everything, not gently, not subtly, completely. He's constantly telling me things that I should do, Toya said in a 1990 interview, sitting right next to him, unable to even speak about his control while he was listening. That's how total it was. She couldn't open her mouth without his permission. She was trapped in a marriage where even honesty was forbidden. Even naming what was happening to her was forbidden. She had to smile for the cameras while her jailer sat beside her, watching every word. The isolation came too. Gordon kept her away from her family. He told her they didn't love her. He told her they would betray her. He created a world where he was the only person she could depend on, and then he made sure her that depending on him meant suffering. LaToya later described the marriage as in name only a legal cage that served one purpose: to give him access to her fortune, her name, and her voice. Everything she owned, everything she was, belonged to him. The physical abuse came too. In 1993, Gordon hit her with a chair. The impact left her with a black eye, 12 stitches in her mouth, bruises spreading across her back and arms. She gave the exclusive to the New York Post. She showed them what he'd done to her. She could have pressed charges. The evidence was there. The injuries were documented, but she didn't. She protected him. She said it was self-defense on his part. That's what abuse does. It makes the victim defend the abuser even while they're being destroyed. It rewrites reality inside the victim's mind until the abuser becomes the victim and the victim becomes the protector. Years later, after she escaped him, LaToya revealed something that reframed everything about her book and everything she'd said in 1991. She said Jack Gordon wrote much of what appeared in her name, not just influence. She said he inserted stories to embarrass the family, to make scandal, to create chaos that would keep her name in the tabloids and money flowing into his pockets. She said he controlled her words, her allegations, her narrative. She said he fed her drugs to keep her compliant, drugs he administered while she was dependent on him, while she was isolated from everyone who might have helped her see what was happening. She said she never wanted to write that book in the first place. The publisher later reported that in the weeks before the book's release, Gordon ordered the manuscript kept in a high-security vault. He was terrified the Jackson family would try to sabotage it. But who was he protecting? Not LaToya. Her family. Not LaToya. The money the book would make. The attention it would bring. The power it would give him over her. And later still, she would admit, I didn't want to author that first book. The truth is that I didn't want to. That matters because it means LaToya's betrayal of Michael wasn't entirely her own. It was Gordon's. She was the vehicle. He was the driver. But Michael didn't know that. He only knew his sister was speaking against him. He only knew that the person who should have protected him in private was destroying him in public. And he didn't know it was Jack Gordon pulling the strings, didn't know his sister had become a prisoner in her own marriage, forced to weaponize family trauma to feed a man who'd learned how to control through fear, isolation, and violence. For Michael, there was only one truth. His sister had betrayed him. The mechanism behind that betrayal wouldn't come out for years. By then, the damage was permanent. Segment 4, December 8, 1993, the press conference. Michael Jackson was already collapsing. In August 1993, a 13-year-old boy named Jordan Chandler came forward with allegations that Michael had molested him. The investigation began. The media descended like vultures. Michael's life started to disintegrate in real time. By December, he was barely human anymore. He was taking massive quantities of painkillers. He couldn't eat. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't leave Neverland without being mobbed. He was isolated. He was terrified. He was watching his legacy burn in front of him, and he had no escape. His lawyers were fighting in courts. The media was circling. The public was turning against him based on allegations that hadn't been proven, accusations that wouldn't hold up to scrutiny. But perception had become reality. Elizabeth Taylor was forcing him to eat. His weight was dropping. His mind was barely functioning. His lawyers were telling him his life was in danger if he kept taking the drugs he needed to survive the pain. He was caught in an impossible contradiction. He needed the painkillers to cope, but the painkillers were destroying his ability to function, which meant he couldn't defend himself, which meant the allegations looked more true, which meant he needed more painkillers to cope with the destruction of everything he'd built. Michael was dying, and he knew it. On November 12, he'd collapsed at the airport. He'd checked into a private clinic. He was on a whole floor by himself, isolated even from other patients, trying to come apart in private. The man who'd brought joy to millions couldn't bring himself to get out of bed. Then, on December 8, 1993, while Michael was at his lowest point, while he was still in the clinic, still fighting addiction, still barely functional, LaToya held a press conference in Tel Aviv, Israel. She stood in front of cameras and did what Gordon had written for her to do. She twisted the knife deeper. I cannot and will not be a silent collaborator of his crimes against small, innocent children, she said. Her voice was small, almost sorrowful, as if she was delivering bad news, not destroying her own brother, as if she was reluctant, as if this was hard for her. But the words were lethal. She claimed their mother Catherine had shown her checks supposedly made out to boys' families. Hush money, she implied without evidence. She claimed she'd seen them around 84, but she couldn't say exactly when, couldn't remember specifics, couldn't produce the actual documents. She claimed she knew what the checks meant. She claimed she was coming forward out of moral obligation. But here's what matters. She didn't have the checks. She couldn't produce them. She'd never actually witnessed Michael do anything inappropriate with a child. She didn't have photographs. She didn't have recordings. She didn't have a single piece of direct evidence. She had only what she was claiming her mother told her decades earlier, during a time when LaToya was under Gordon's control during a time when she couldn't trust her own mind because Gordon had filled it with drugs and fear and isolation, and she was presenting it to the world as fact, as evidence, as the words of someone who knew. The world believed her because she was family, because a sister wouldn't lie about something this serious, because if your own sister won't defend you, won't stand beside you, won't vouch for your character, maybe you're guilty. Maybe you really are the monster everyone is saying you are. On the Today Show the next morning, she admitted she had no proof. Katie Couric asked her directly, "Do you have evidence?" And LaToya said no. She couldn't produce the checks. She'd never seen them with her own eyes. She was basing everything on what someone told her she'd seen years earlier. But by then, it didn't matter. The accusation was out there. It was on the news. It was being discussed everywhere. And the accusation was enough. Tabloids started bidding for her proof. US and UK outlets were offering money for the checks, for documentation, for something concrete. The bidding war fell through when she couldn't actually provide anything because there was nothing to provide. And Michael, already drowning, went under completely. He read about his sister on the news. He read that she was coming forward. He read that she was claiming he was a pedophile. He read that the world was believing her, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. No statement was strong enough. No denial was loud enough. His sister had spoken, and the world had decided to listen. That matters because in that moment, Michael learned something about family that would haunt him forever. The people closest to you can destroy you, and you can't stop them. And sometimes they do it not out of malice, but because someone else, someone who owns them, is pulling the strings. But the result is the same. You're destroyed, you're isolated, you're betrayed, and you don't even know who betrayed you. Segment 5. Escalation on live television. The press conference in Tel Aviv wasn't the end, it was the beginning. LaToya, or Jack Gordon speaking through LaToya, didn't stop, couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. The media was hungry, and LaToya was feeding them. And with each interview, her story got bigger. The very next day, December 9, she appeared on the Today Show via satellite from Tel Aviv. Katie Couric asked her the question that mattered. Do you have proof? LaToya admitted she didn't. No proof of the checks, no witnesses, no physical evidence. But she kept talking anyway. She kept asserting. She kept implying that she knew things the world didn't. Her story kept changing. It kept growing. On Donahue, she claimed their father Joseph had sexually abused their sister Rebbe. But when pressed, when asked if she'd witnessed this herself, she hesitated. She said she'd only alluded to it in the book. She said she hadn't spelled it out explicitly. But then, days later, she was on another show claiming Joseph had sexually abused her. On September 12 on Larry King Live, she got even more specific. The abuse started when she was 10. It lasted until she was probably 13. She gave numbers. She gave a timeline. She made it sound certain, even though she was estimating, guessing, remembering things that happened decades earlier through the lens of trauma and Gordon's manipulation. Each interview got more detail. Each one opened a new wound on Michael's reputation. She went from show to show today, Donahue, Larry King Live, Maury, and with each appearance, something shifted. Her allegations against Michael escalated. New accusations emerged. She was rewriting the story even as she was telling it, and the media kept giving her a platform. The ratings were good. Abuse allegations sold airtime. In October 1991, she publicly threatened the family, "This is only forcing me to write LaToya Part 2, and it will make Part 1 look like Peter Pan." She was holding the narrative hostage. If they didn't accept her version of the truth, she'd expose more. She'd go deeper. She'd make it worse. This was extortion disguised as truth-telling. And then she did something that revealed exactly what this was really about. She launched a 900 number. Callers could dial it and pay to hear dirt about her family members. Pay per minute to hear secrets. Pay to listen to LaToya or Gordon's voice through LaToya detail family trauma. She was monetizing Michael's collapse. She was turning her siblings' pain into a product, each secret worth a certain number of dollars per call. Michael's alleged crimes were a commodity. Janet's secrets were merchandise. The family's dysfunction became a phone line where strangers could dial in and get entertainment dressed up as expos. Michael was reading about this. He was living through this. He was watching his sister profit from his humiliation while he was barely able to function. He was in a clinic trying to recover from drug addiction, and his sister was on national television telling new stories, launching new allegations, creating new problems that his lawyers had to defend against, and he couldn't stop her. No statement was strong enough. No denial would make her stop. She controlled the narrative because the media gave it to her. She owned the platform. She owned the story, and every day brought a new betrayal. That matters because it shows the escalation of cruelty. Michael wasn't just being accused once and then left alone to defend himself. He was being accused repeatedly. The allegations were changing. Each new story was a fresh wound. The media was treating it as entertainment. LaToya, controlled by Gordon, or or choosing her own path. The distinction blurred by now was treating it as a career opportunity, and Michael was disappearing under the weight of it all. Segment 6. The evidence that wasn't there. Here's what's crucial to understand. LaToya had no proof. None. She claimed her mother Catherine showed her checks around 1984, but she couldn't produce them. She couldn't name the boys. She couldn't provide dates or amounts. She had nothing concrete, nothing verifiable, nothing that would hold up to any scrutiny. When Katie Couric pressed her on Today, LaToya admitted it. When tabloids started bidding for her proof, US and UK outlets offering money for evidence, the bidding fell through. There was no evidence. There was only her word, and her word kept changing. The Jackson family responded immediately. They closed ranks. Catherine told the Chicago Tribune, "Everything in the book is a lie." Joseph denied ever hitting LaToya. Janet gave a televised interview. "It's just a way of getting attention." The attention she didn't get from the public. Rebbe went on national television and directly denied LaToya's accusations about their father. "No, that's not true. No, that never happened to me. It honestly didn't," she said on ABC News. The family was unified. They said LaToya was lying. They said she was exploiting a personal matter for fame. A poll at the time found that over 50% of Americans agreed they thought she was exploiting a personal matter. But it didn't matter. LaToya had already created a Pandora's box that couldn't be closed. Even if people didn't believe her, even if she had no proof, the accusations were out there. The damage was done. Michael couldn't unsay them. He couldn't prove they were false. He could only watch as the world decided what to believe. That matters because it reveals the cruelty of accusations. Proof isn't required, just the willingness to speak. And Michael was learning that his sister, whether by choice or by force, was willing to speak. Segment 7. Michael's collapse. While LaToya appeared on daytime television and escalated her allegations, Michael Jackson was coming apart at the seams. His body was shutting down. His mind was fracturing. Everything that made him function was being destroyed. In a deposition on November 8, 1993, in Mexico City, he appeared drowsy and disoriented. He couldn't remember his own album dates. He couldn't recall the names of people he'd worked with for years. He slurred his words. He was taking massive quantities of painkillers. His lawyer, Bert Fields, spoke publicly about it. Michael's life was in danger if he continued taking these massive quantities of drugs. He was barely able to function adequately on an intellectual level. On November 12, Michael canceled the entire second half of his Dangerous World Tour. He got on a plane to London with Elizabeth Taylor. When he arrived at the airport, he collapsed. He had to be rushed to a clinic. He had 18 vials of medication in his suitcase. He was admitted to the entire 4th floor so he could have privacy while he came apart. His friend Elizabeth Taylor had to sit with him and force him to eat. He'd stopped eating entirely. She took a spoon and put it in his mouth because he couldn't take care of himself anymore. His body was wasting away. His mind was barely functioning. He was dying in real time while the world watched his sister on television explaining why he deserved it. On December 22, 1993, Michael responded for the first time. He spoke via satellite from Neverland Ranch, his voice quiet and broken. "I deny all the allegations against me," he said. He called the police strip search the most humiliating ordeal of my life. He said the media was manipulating everything, but by then, it didn't matter. The narrative was set. LaToya had spoken. The damage was irreversible. That matters, because Michael's collapse shows what these accusations cost him, not in terms of his career, but in terms of his humanity. He was disappearing. Segment 8. The family's response and the complication. The Jackson family's response to LaToya was immediate and absolute. They disowned her, cut her off completely, told the world she was lying, told the world she was exploiting Michael's pain for attention and money. Catherine Jackson was especially brutal. "Everything in the book is a lie," she said. Later, after everything had come out, she would say that LaToya's book was the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life besides the death of my mother. Think about that. The death of her mother. That's how traumatic she found her daughter's betrayal. Michael didn't immediately forgive her. The family rallied completely around Michael because regardless of whether LaToya's allegations were true, she had broken the most sacred law of the Jackson family. You don't expose family business on the world stage. You don't betray your siblings in front of billions of people. But here's the complication that nobody talks about. Some of what LaToya said was actually true. Not the accusations against Michael. Those were false. But her claims about their father's abuse, those had basis in reality. When Michael went on Oprah in 1993, he confirmed that Joseph's beatings were every bit as extreme as LaToya had claimed. Jackie and Jermaine publicly acknowledged on national television that Joseph had used a whip, that they'd received beatings, that the fear was real. Janet would later write in her memoir about being beaten by Joseph before she was 8 years old. So LaToya wasn't lying about everything, but she'd weaponized family trauma. She'd used her siblings' pain as a platform for her own career. She'd mixed truth truth with accusation against Michael in a way that blurred everything beyond recognition. And most crucially, she'd done it to Michael at the moment he was most vulnerable. The family's message was clear. The truth doesn't matter if you betray us to get it out. And Michael learned that lesson in the harshest possible way. That matters because it shows the Jackson family's code. Loyalty comes before honesty. Family protection comes before individual truth. And Michael would carry that wound for the rest of his life. Segment 9. 20 years later, the real story. In 2011, 18 years after that press conference in Tel Aviv, LaToya released a second memoir called Starting Over. And in it, she made an admission that reframed everything. She wrote that the press conference was among the biggest regrets in my life. She wrote that Jack Gordon was behind every word of her first book, not behind her emotions, behind the words themselves. Every allegation, every escalation, every claim Gordon had written it or forced her to say it. She said she'd never wanted to write the book in the first place. She said Gordon controlled everything about it. She said he was feeding her mind, altering drugs to keep her compliant. She said an FBI agent told her Gordon had used her to smuggle diamonds and drugs through airport security, using her celebrity as cover. And most importantly, she wrote this: I never believed for a minute my brother was guilty of anything like that. She said her family knew it wasn't really me talking. She said Michael eventually understood. He forgave her. By 2003, when she was interviewed by Larry King, Michael had already moved past the betrayal. He understood that his sister had been a victim too, not of Michael, but of an abusive man who'd owned her completely. But that forgiveness doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't erase the damage. It doesn't give Michael back the moment when he needed his family and his sister turned against him instead. That matters, because this is the real tragedy of LaToya's story. Michael didn't lose his sister because she chose to betray him. He lost his sister because an abusive man owned her. He lost her at the exact moment he needed her most. And by the time she got free, by the time she told the truth, the world had already decided what it believed about Michael Jackson. LaToya eventually escaped Jack Gordon. Their divorce was finalized in 1997. She reunited with her family. She apologized. She tried to take back the words. But words once spoken to the world can never truly be taken back. They echo, they define, they destroy. And Michael carried that wound for the rest of his life, not because his sister lied about him, but because in his darkest hour, he learned that even family could be weaponized against him. He lost LaToya twice, once to Jack Gordon's control and once to the world's judgment, and he never got her back. End screen CTA. Inside Michael Jackson's $20 in the Mist, Havenhurst is 8 years after his death. So we just saw what LaToya said about Michael in front of the world, but what was actually happening behind closed doors inside the family's own house while all of this was falling apart. Michael's family home, Havenhurst, wasn't just a place where the Jacksons lived. It was where the control happened. It was where the rules were set. It was where young Michael learned to fear his father, where family secrets were kept, and where silence was enforced. But the world never saw inside those walls. Years after Michael's death in 2024, the story of what Havenhurst actually was, what happened in those rooms, how the family operated, and why Michael needed to escape to Neverland in the first place finally started coming out. In the next video, you'll see inside Havenhurst. You'll walk through the rooms where Joseph ruled with an iron fist. You'll see the spaces Michael tried to hide from, and you'll discover what the house itself reveals about the family dynamics that shaped him and why understanding Havenhurst is essential to understanding everything Michael became.